Awesome. Great. Okay. So we touched a little bit already on what we're all about. Thank you for that intro. I am passionate about this project for many reasons. But first, I just want to thank you all for joining, all you professionals, taking the time from your busy day to join this conversation. So let's learn from each other. I have spent the last 2 decades of my life in some kind of client services capacity. And I've learned some lessons along the way, as well as observed some really quality business email communications. And I'd like to share some of what I've learned with you today. I thank you so much already for jumping in with your preferences on the time of year. Personally, I'm a fall person. I love football and the seasons when the leaves change. So autumn is by far my favorite. I wanted to just throw it out to you guys real quick before we move on into the content. Using your reactions or your emoji, I would like to know, are you guys seasonal pumpkin flavoring? Thumbs up if you are, thumbs down if you don't like it. However you feel about that. Let's see, anybody throwing out there their thumbs up or thumbs down?
Oh yeah. We've got several thumbs up, only one thumbs down, and it's coming from Hallie. Interesting.
Yeah. So personally, I just think pumpkin should be in pie. So I don't like it in a latte or however else people tend to get creative with pumpkin spices this time of year. Anyway, so moving on, guys, let's start today's conversation by setting intentions. The purpose of this webinar is really to reiterate and clarify best practices in business email communications. So we're encouraging everyone to participate with questions in the chat. This content is not new or revolutionary. Rather, the intention here is to remind everyone of best practices that we often can fall out of habit with doing consistently. So as we step through today, I encourage you to identify where your current practice might improve. Essentially, being your best self at work. So before we advance, I'd like to take a quick pause here and Celeste, throw up the polling question, regarding the topic of email and communications. So basically, which of the following of these areas do you want to improve upon the most?
Thanks, Jada. I just put up the poll. I just want to make sure that everyone can see it. It is something where you can rank, so you can go ahead and choose the answer that fits you best. Jada, just to make sure, can you see it?
I can.
Perfect.
To interact with it.
This is Crystal. I can see it, but the columns are labeled 1, 2, and 3, so we can't tell. Is it column? Maybe I missed it. Is column 1 the most, or column 1 is the least?
Oh, thank you. I'm so sorry that that's confusing, Crystal. Thanks for the quick feedback. 1 is the most. So you can rank them, or you could just click on, I think you can click on the ones that are most important to you. Looks like people are coming in on to be seen as more experienced and professional might be the top one that's coming through.
The question is for the topic of email business communications. Which of the following areas are most interested to improve upon? And I don't think the poll quite worked well, but basically some of the ideas were to be seen as more experienced or professional, elicit replies to questions, gaining your team and or company alignment, or feeling more confident as a business email exchange. Or, maybe you already know everything and you're just joining today to confirm that. So I'd like to move into the next point here, which is more at a 1,000-foot level, if you will, or 10,000-foot level, the bigger concept. Our individual core values guide our communication standards and best practices. And how you present yourself to the world is your personal brand. From the clothes you wear to the haircut that you have, the choices that you make become your brand. And it's the same concept here I'm bringing to the discussion as it applies to your email brand. Most of us at some point have taken an index of our core values, accountability at work, the passion that you have for your work, maybe the collaborative team model and embracing that, or your commitment to your customers. I'm simply posing the concept of having an intention with your email brand, essentially asking yourself, maybe what are 3 words that you would like others to feel when they get emails from you? And in putting together the slides for this conversation, I thought about this for myself. And I think for me, my 3 words I'd like to invoke, if you will, are cheerful, professional, and experienced. I would love it if during the course of our time together today, you put some thought behind perhaps what some of those 3 words that you would like to invoke come to mind. Just curious if anybody has ever thought about how others might perceive you from your email brand. I'd love to hear from you about that. Personally, I worked in college for Walt Disney World in the Epcot Center, and we spent 2 full weeks training as cast members before we were allowed to be customer facing. So it was a very specific directive that when you are stepping into your role as a cast member at Walt Disney World, you're no longer you. You're in a bigger brand, if you will. I'm also curious here if anybody else has worked for an organization that has given such a clear directive on their brand. Put it in the chat, or pipe up, if you will, whichever way you want to do it. It's just an interesting concept. So be thinking about this in the back of your mind. We'll come back to it. So today we're going to spend some time examining 4 chapters. And these are essentially the backdrop of the topics that we'll cover. When I was organizing the structure of this conversation, these topics just continued to resurface as the ideal balance of mastering email communications in business. So we're going to unpack each of these at a time. And again, feel free to ask any questions along the way. We're going to start with clarity, tone, and brevity. And we're going to look into each of these one at a time. So email really is a form of communication, just a simple exchange of information. Whether you are seeking it or providing the information, it's critical to do it clearly and concisely. I'd like to ask you if you can recall your frustrations when you read an email and you had no clue what that email was about. For example, if somebody said, "Can you send me the letter from the guy about the thing?" It's interesting because in email, it is something that if you were facing the person one-on-one, you would stop them and say, "What? I don't know what you're talking about. Let's get on the same page." So clarity really begins with the practice of active listening, being inquisitive and asking clarifying questions, restating key elements it is super impactful when you're listening to someone and you restate back to them. For example, can I just tell you what I'm hearing and you tell me if that's what you meant? Or I'm just going to restate if we're aligned because this is what I'm hearing. All of a sudden, that puts you in a posture of, oh, they're really listening. And that addresses questions and gets the clarity right there. Even if the answer is, I don't know, always addressing those questions. It's a very, very powerful tool to just simply say, I don't know is the answer to your question. You want to avoid an infinite email thread, ensuring that the subject lines reflect the content and the context of the email and the current conversation. So let's say the original topic has shifted, for example, and the original outreach now has gone into a completely different topic. You should update that subject matter, the subject line, and feel free to even start a brand new thread. Also, the last point here, proofreading, just making sure that, in a team environment, throwing that email over to your teammate and just saying, can you take a quick look at this? That is excellent way to make sure that you're being crystal clear. So the next element here is tone. And this is really tying back into that brand identity coming into play. My neighbor is a very seasoned pharmacist, and he was telling me about a very harshly toned email that he received from his corporate office that literally soured him so much that that was the moment he decided to retire. Wow, that is power in tone. And so tone is a huge element. You want to come across as friendly and personable. Think about remembering that your client has children and throwing in there, how was trick-or-treating, or what are you guys planning for the holidays? Some element of familiarity should be aligned with how you really feel about that audience. It should never be forced. Also, you also want to make sure that you're professional, using language that reflects that relationship. So when I moved from New York City to Los Angeles, I had a manager that gave me some very specific feedback. She had a tone that she wanted to strike with her clients. And so she told me, I would like your emails to be a little bit more friendly, maybe include some exclamation points, maybe some smiley faces. So I began to do that. And it's funny because along the way, maybe I'm just softer now and I've become more West Coast, but I feel like that actually is more aligned with my personal brand. So it's rare you will get an email from me without an emoji. So I'm curious, maybe in the chat, I'd be interested to know which one of these types of East Coast, West Coast, New York, LA, do you identify with your brand? Are you more likely to get to the point New Yorker? Are you a little more friendly emoji, smiley face, Los Angeles type? So the language choices are very powerful when it comes to tone. You want to invoke a feeling of partnership with your audience. So for example, thank you for your request versus I received your request. Holy smokes, that's a very different posture. Or even something like, to complete your request, I will need, versus you neglected to include. So just reiterating that the tone is very powerful. And the final one to round it out, this chapter, if you will, is keeping it brief. So, summing up this last point quickly is just enough context, not too much, is a powerful element. in your emailing process, keeping clear. It needs to be obvious what the point of the email is, right? So phrasing things to elicit a response in a specific way. For example, can you get this to me by Friday versus when can you provide what I need? Are you available Wednesday at 2:00 versus when can you meet? So those types of choices, think through the next feedback question, which is, if you said, when can you meet? And then they're going, I can meet Tuesday, Wednesday. All of a sudden, now you're in an infinite thread email. So providing those dates and those details, and then visually giving a recap with your single sentence paragraphs, breaking things down into steps, recapping emails is all a part of rounding out being brief. I'm gonna take a beat here, Celesta. What's going on in the chat?
Yeah, Jada, thanks. It's so fun. And I would love to know more about Crystal and Heather and Julie and Annie and Hallie, because you've got some definite opinions about West or East Coast vibe. Hallie says she's definitely more LA with emojis, friendly, smiley face, even hearts. Where Heather says she's a blend, but probably leans east. And let's see, we've got Julie who says she's in the middle, likes to be cordial in the beginning and make sure that they feel thanked, but short and sweet, as we all get a ton of email. So obviously, very true, and we all get that. Annie says friendly, but in diplomatic language, so maybe in the middle. And then Amanda says my tendency is more LA, but with some beach vibes, friendly but chill. And Amanda, you're using emojis, so
Oh, yeah.
that's very Southern California there.
Nice. Very cool. Thanks, guys, for your feedback. As we move into the second chapter here on email structure, I just want to clarify that what I have found is that sometimes people make assumptions that we share the same knowledge or understanding of a topic, and often that's not the case. So in this section, we'll break down what I'm identifying as 5 components of an effective email. And I'll also go through a couple of examples after we break these down. So at the very forefront of these effective email components are the CC and the BCC. So carbon copy and blind carbon copy. And you may think this is a little basic, but let's unpack it for a minute. So when you are, let's say, getting a client from your coworker, and the coworker tells you, by the way, this person has asked whenever we send them an email if we could CC their assistant, just so that they're in the loop and they always are aware of what's being communicated. And you taking over that brand new account, you're reaching out to John client here, and you CC his assistant. Right off the bat, the recipient, your John client, is like, oh, they listen to me, I'm important. And it makes them feel heard that you have taken the time to specifically do what they've asked. Also, keeping in mind not to CYA too much. Don't over cover your bases. The exchange of information is helpful and respectful if you don't CC everybody under the moon. I know you've been in the same boat with me, having been CC'd in an email thread, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? You're like, why am I being CC'd? What's happening here? So being very intentional, if you will, with who you are sending the email with, as well as the CC. Keep in mind, it's the same way when you're receiving emails. So if you aren't in the two and you're somehow BCC'd, let's not reply to all. Just keep that in mind. So right there at the very beginning, the intentions of an effective email is thinking through the audience of who should be in receipt or copied in this email. The next component is the subject line. Ooh, very near and dear to my heart, the subject line. And I know you're thinking, what a nerd, but that's okay. I have a little bit of a pet peeve when it comes to the subject line. You really should always consider your audience and their inbox, right? So an example of what I mean here is, let's say you are in charge of a fundraiser for Movember, and you're reaching out to multiple businesses in your community. And over time, they're starting to get back to you whether or not they can contribute to your fundraiser. Well, all the subject lines that are coming in your inbox just say Movember. So consider maybe putting your business name right at the very front of that subject line. Right there, you're clarifying for your audience, the recipient, who this is coming from, right there in the subject line. And it clears through some of the clutter for them. And be sure to include exactly what the context of the email is about. If it's urgent, say urgent. When it stops being urgent, remove urgent from that subject line. Also, anything that is asked of them, let's say a contract e-signature needed, put right there in the subject line. And don't be too vague. I would assume many of you have gotten an email at some point that the subject line is just follow up. Let's not do that. That's a little too generic. Diving into our greeting. Okay, guys, emoji reaction time from you. I would like to know from a raising of a hand or a shout out, have you ever received an email with your name misspelled? Anybody?
I'm seeing some nods on screen. So Crystal's nodding and says yes. Annie says yes in all caps. Hallie, Ben, thumbs up. So I guess we've all had that. I'm surprised, Ben, your name seems very simple. So, and Crystal, people who have known you for years are still misspelling your name. Oh,
Well,
Crystal.
that right there, getting I personally have a simple name, but people tend to write Jana. I don't know. I guess that's more common. It's a very easy thing not to get wrong. So even if you have to cut and paste from someone's signature to spell their name correctly, start there. You are building a rapport by someone's name. That's a very powerful point to the greeting. So you want to come across as friendly and personable in the greeting. In this example, I've just put hi, John. Very simple. But there again, John is a name that could have an H or not an H. So making sure you're spelling the person's name correctly. In the body of the email, a couple of things to consider here. Personalized conversation opener. I personally love this element. Maybe as a New Yorker, I didn't embrace it quite as much. Just get to the point. But in my brand and how I like to be treated, I want to know somebody cares, right? Hey, in this example, I just said, thanks for the quick chat. So John and I have spoken, and this is a recap email of our conversation. But you want to identify maybe it's their birthday coming up. What are you doing for your birthday? It should be a very natural type of personalization for your conversation opener. Utilizing bullet points, referencing multiple items. I love to visually be able to look at the email and figure out, okay, this is important. Highlighting important text, using bold in text, and always including a next step, whether that is a deliverable that they're expecting or just as simple as when they hear back from you. And I just rounded it out with have a great weekend. Now, the signature part may feel like a bit of a similar vibe to the 2C and BCC in that, yeah, okay, signatures. But I'm wondering if any of you can relate to a time somewhere in your professional business career where you have felt like you're playing detective trying to figure out how to get in touch with somebody versus email or phone number or something. You're like, who did this come from? we don't want our audience to have to be a detective. And so consistently including your full name, your email address, a contact phone number, and if you have social media to share, this is a great spot to put that. You may be thinking, well, I emailed them, they have my email. Well, consider if the information you're sharing in your email is then forwarded on without including who it came from. So you consistently want to have that email signature. It's just a best practice. All right, so those are the 5 components. And I'd like to just quickly run through a few visual examples of other emails. So in these examples, I'm just including the subject and the body sections and excluding the other components. So in this example, starting with the subject line, I am very specific about which campaign I'm talking about and the other context of the email, as well as having my pleasant opener and just the tone that I'm striking with the information. You also see that visually how I've organized into sections so that your eye can see this area is about this, and then we move into a different topic. Here is a quick visual of what a call recap email note would look like. So in this example, I had a meeting with multiple people and it was client facing. So when I follow up, I'm addressing my client and I'm restating the elements of the call, when it was, who was there, and then breaking out those specific components into 2 sections even. I also really love highlighting things. When I worked in New York City, I had a coworker who actually nicknamed me Skittles due to the large number of colors I would wear all at once. So I love color. And as you can see here, just quickly looking at this, I can see that Chris has an assignment to provide status updates. And I have visually assigned myself to send a wrap-up report. And then one final example, again, just reiterating the organizing of your sentences into single sentence paragraphs even. Bold, highlighting the strong performance. This really stands out. And just circling back with a tone about why they do business with us, for example. So just putting it out there that if you have enjoyed this piece, these templates and examples will be available afterwards for you guys. So we're going to pause there. Celesta?
Yeah, Jada, it's been fun in the chat. Crystal, I'm going to see if you're comfortable taking yourself off of mute, because I think it's hilarious some of your comments saying that you would maybe do it a little differently, or that your leaders may hate some of that highlighting. Would you just elucidate on that?
Sure.
Hi, Crystal.
I was just saying it because I have one particular leader that is very anti-highlighting, and particularly if you have to highlight, she wants it in a specific color, and the yellow and the green, she would be like, I can't even look at that. So what I often do, and there's nothing wrong with the way Jada did it, but what I often do is put action items at the bottom. So it might be action items underlined and bolded. And then I might put, number 1 or a bullet point, and it would have the person's name and then a dash and then what their expectation is to do and a date by which they need to do it.
Yeah. Crystal, it sounds like they communicated that the tone of highlighting was aggressive for them. So I think it's powerful to communicate to others what your preferences even, right? That's a feedback loop that's important.
Right. And I get tons of emails that have the highlighting that show exactly what you just did. Here's what you're supposed to do, from other leaders. It's just, I think it's funny. And you're right, Jada, you just have to communicate with whomever and be flexible, because your clients are not going to care whether you or your leader like highlighting. they like highlighting, and so you take highlighting.
Or if they do care, they might tell you, and then you'll have that note,
right.
right?
Right.
Thank you for sharing that, Crystal. In this next section, we are going to unpack the must-have standards. And you're probably thinking, what in the heck does that mean? When I started thinking visually about an image to put here to kind of illustrate my thought process, I came across this image and it looks lovely. This person is packing to go on a vacation. They're even having maybe a little mojito. Like, this is a great vibe, right? And I thought about, this is kind of what it's like when you're setting your intentions and your standards in your business. Think about going on a vacation. You don't just get up off your chair and go out the door. You have to proactively plan for this. You have to think about the flight. You have to be considering who's going with you, their schedule, your time off from work. So the point here is being proactive and not reactive, even in the context of your business email, is a way of a mindset. So anticipating and answering those questions. Am I going on this trip? Am I going to have a fancy dinner, or should I pack a swimsuit, or do I need a parka? Those anticipations of what's going to happen after you send that email and answering it, even before it's out your inbox. Uncertainty. What's the temperature going to be like? Do I need my passport? Any uncertainty that you have, just addressing it right on. Ask those questions. It's refreshing. No news is still news. So I think about this like dropping my car off at the mechanic, if you will. And when I dropped it off, the client service person at the front desk told me it's going to be 3 to 7 days while we fix it. Well, on the third day, I get a call from client services and they say, you know what, we've ordered a part that we need to fix your car, but it's not in yet. Well, nothing's changed. My car isn't ready. But I feel like my expectations have been readjusted and I've been prioritized with my time and I feel important. So no news is still news. Nothing happening, telling somebody it's not happening, it's a powerful element. And I have found in my personal life, it really helps with my husband. He says, where's the dry cleaning? And I haven't gotten to it. I don't even know if it's ready. If I tell him, I know you wanted that dry cleaning, babe. I'm going to find out if it's ready. I haven't done anything, but I'm just checking in with him to know you said that was important and I heard you. Another element here to round out the must-have standards, at some point or another, we're all human, we're going to encounter some type of criticism. And when I worked at Walt Disney World, they explained to us, when you become a cast member at Walt Disney World and customers are coming into the park, they have an expectation of having a great time. It's the happiest place on earth, right? They come there expecting a certain level of service. And when something bad happens, let's say a ride was closed, or their child lost their favorite bracelet, whatever the bad experience is, as a cast member, if you can step into that situation and change the opportunity, change the outcome, it becomes an opportunity for even more in-depth experience. Meaning, if you can exceed those expectations by something bad and turn it into something good, now you're even happier. So when you do receive some criticism, finding a way to respond positively to that and work it into your practice, that's going to add a connection and growth with your clients, with your coworkers. It could be as simple as not being on time for a meeting or missing a meeting altogether, and connecting with that coworker via email or chat and just saying, hey, that's on me. Next time I'll be on time because your time's important too. Just responding positively to criticism, we should reflect it as an opportunity for growth. The last section here in the chapters, if you will, is the follow-up and follow-through. And again, all 4 of these work together to create the best practice standards. And I broke follow-up and follow-through into 2 sections. The first one's responsiveness, consistency and regularity. And funny enough, when you pause and really think about this, you are in control. You really are in control. And you may think our culture tends to tell us that faster is better. That may not always be the case. Sometimes it is. In the vein of sales, for example, the Harvard Business Review actually did an analyzing of 1.25 million sales leads. And they concluded in that instance, potential customers getting an email response back within 1 hour makes it 7 times more likely to close a sale than if you reply within 2 hours. That's pretty powerful for responsiveness. But under the guise of your own personal consistency and regularity, I would like to go back over to a potential poll here. Let's see if it works out this time. And just get an idea of how long do you take to respond to business emails? Like you personally in your business email practice.
Thanks, Jada. I have put the poll up there. I apologize for the one earlier, so hopefully this one is a little easier. It looks like we've got 2 out of 2 people saying 1 business day. So that looks like the consensus right now, but a couple others. Crystal, is it still up on screen if it's not on screen? Okay.
So,
all right, it looks, oh, sorry, disappeared. So yep, so it looks like 1 business day, Jada, is what the people who got a chance to answer were answering.
So that's pretty spot on, really. According to mailtime.com, 52% of people expect a reply to work-related email within 12 to 24 hours. So, you know, depending on the type of business and work that you're in, obviously there is something as, you know, client concerns or fires, if you will, and different types of deadlines. But those fall into a bit of a different bucket than your personal brand of responsiveness. I think it's helpful to maybe think about it like this. So evolve the calm. Let's say we have 2 clients right now and we're servicing the heck out of them. We're replying so fast, but in 3 to 5 years, we're hoping to grow to 20 clients. And in the next 6 months, now we have 5 clients. Our first 2 clients, now they all of a sudden don't feel as responsive as they were in the beginning. So you are setting your own pace of business, and you should think through how quickly you're getting back to people because you're setting an expectation of the flow of your pace. So keep that in mind as you think about how quickly you respond to things. You are setting them an expectation. It's also really helpful if you just tell somebody when they're going to hear from you, right? Communicating, like Crystal mentioned before, setting that expectation with your associates or your vendors or even your colleagues, like, I will get back to you before the end of the day, or I'm going to give you a status update Tuesday every week, right? Having that clear expectation laid out is a powerful amount to the consistency. And the next element here is the communication flow. So when I first started thinking about what's a visual aid to kind of put into scope what I mean by a communication flow, I thought of like that pristine lake with the pebble dropped in and the flows out from that. But then I came across this image and I'm like, this is much more accurate. Communication and email flow, especially just the exchange of data, is happening over here. I'm CC'd on that one. This one's coming out. My boss is telling me. So it's kind of all over the place, right? So when it comes to the communication flow, this is part of the follow up and follow through I'm speaking to. So establishing that really clear communication channel, um, what kind of information will be communicated, how often will I hear from you, having a commitment as a team to the documentation, maybe it's a recap from meetings, just an understanding of the communication flow is a huge element. So when it comes to this, I do find sometimes this falls into the bucket of they're going to do it. You should really just take ownership of your own information and communication flow and just take on the facilitation of getting information exchanged, right? If there's any uncertainty, just getting right in there and addressing it right on. And the last one here is asking for help. How powerful would it be if a team member came to you and said, I know you guys are expecting the recap. I really don't have time to get to it. Can you help me? Well, that puts me in a different posture than being annoyed by waiting on it, right? You have communicated to me that you need some help. We're all overwhelmed at some point, right? So, Celesta, anything noteworthy from you?
No, we're moving right along, although I do want to say that Crystal had a great idea, which is setting expectations and maybe even putting an expectation in the footnote in your email signature about, hey, this is when I think her wording, sorry, Crystal, is my goal is to respond to emails in this amount of time. I think that's such a great takeaway.
Excellent communication flow, Crystal. Gold star. So in the beginning, we talked about that big idea of a brand, right? And I expressed that my personal brand is something like cheerful, professional, experienced. I'd love to hear from you guys if you have any words that come to mind for you, maybe 3 words that invoke how you want your email recipients to feel. I'd love to hear from you. So I'm gonna actually stop sharing the screen and kind of turn it over to Celesta.
Thanks, Jada. We actually had Heather and Ben who threw in their 3 words early. So Ben, if you want to unmute yourself, I'd love to see if you would keep the same words.
I forgot what I wrote, but I think I would keep the same one. I wrote knowledgeable, concise, I think, and reliable, something like this. And to me, this is kind of what
Knowledgeable,
I'm
reliable, and efficient is what I had.
efficient. Yeah. And then through the presentation, I had more words come to mind, which, you mentioned being friendly, being all of that, which for me is a little bit hard to do via email. I like to just get to the point. But there's one word that I think Heather shared, which really caught my attention, was calm. And I didn't think that's something you could communicate via email. And so I'm actually curious, how would you achieve that in an email?
Thanks, Ben. So Ben's words were knowledgeable, reliable, and efficient. And Heather, I actually wrote down your words. So if you wouldn't mind taking yourself off mute, we'd love to hear, because I think Ben's point is a good one. You wrote genuine, calm, and committed. How do you communicate that with your emails?
Yeah, so and I'm feeding my newborn daughter, so if you hear any noises in the background, that's what's going on. But
Multitasking mama, yes.
So I think calm is, like, when I think of my brand in general, that's something that I just hear a lot of what people think of me. And I think over email, oftentimes we overuse the terms of ASAP and exclamation marks and urgent and this and that. And I think what we talked about in this session of, like, being explicit about when you actually need something done and setting expectations are really ways to make chaotic times feel more calm, and like, this isn't like the world is ending. We need to get it done by this date, or I'm checking in because we need it done by this date for this reason, and explaining the rationale, not making it seem so, I don't know, like just not making it seem like the world is going to end if it doesn't happen, and letting people know the reason for your urgency. Just makes you seem like you have it under control. So yeah, that's what I would say. But, and I use genuine because I think that I can be very honest and direct, but it comes from I used the term genuine because it's, I think a lot of people can sugarcoat things because they want to avoid, conflict in communications or whatever. And I tend to lead towards, I'm going to tell it to you honestly, but delivering it in a way that it doesn't put someone on guard. And it's just like, I genuinely want to help, or I genuinely want you to be able to improve, or whatever it may be.
Wow,
So yeah.
Heather. That's amazing. I just want you to know that if you're not monitoring the chat, Hallie just wrote, "Love that, Heather." So thanks for supporting each other.
Yeah, awesome.
Great. Crystal, you wrote efficient, caring, and professional as your 3 words. Fantastic words. Do you want to share why you chose those?
I'm not sure that I'm settled on those, but I think the efficient being harking back to one of the slides where it's, anticipating people's questions so that you don't have to go back and forth 1,000 times. Sometimes if I get an email, I get frustrated because I'm like, well, of course I have this question, this question, this question. And not that they would have thought or known that I would have all those questions, but at least a couple of them in my mind seem so obvious. So I don't want people to have to, unnecessarily have to ask things. Professional, obviously, I don't want lots of grammar or spelling mistakes, and I want to sound like I know what I'm talking about and that sort of thing. And the caring one is very important to me. I'm trying to figure out a way to describe it. So sometimes people might say, oh, I'm not going to be able to make that because and then fill in the blank. And it's something that's going on with them personally. Well, when I respond to that, I'm going to respond and say, well, I'm really sorry to hear that, or something that truly comes from my heart. Whereas I think sometimes people might think, oh, I'm not going to say anything about that because that's not about creating this meeting, or that's not about whatever. And for me, I feel like if you don't comment on something like that, it doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't put you in a good light. It feels like they just cried in front of you and you just went, okay, now what are we going to do about the groceries? Or,
Oh my gosh, Crystal, thank you. Yes, absolutely.
Sorry.
Jada, welcome back.
Hi. My email,
Hi.
I'm sorry, my internet just said, nope.
That's okay. Crystal was giving a great share. We've had a lot of you share your words, and Hallie, you just typed in, also love the word genuine, focused, and approachable. Do you want to elucidate or expand on that at all?
Certainly. I loved Heather's response, Crystal's response. Crystal, I love your hair, redhead. But I really truly love the word genuine because that's truly how I am as well. And I hate fake more than anything in the world. So the more genuine you can be, the more real you can be, the better for me. Focused, because while not diagnosed, definitely think I have ADD. So my emails can kind of want to know about your life in general, your family, right? And I need to stay focused and direct sometimes and leave out, similar with you, Crystal. I think there's definitely a give and take there, when it is appropriate, when I should leave that alone and make it a phone call later. And just approachable. I always want anyone to be able to come with me with anything personable. What am I trying to say here? Celeste, what's my word?
Personal.
But something, yes, or business, anything, I'm always approachable. I'm always here. And I want that from others as well.
Thanks, Hallie. Well, some great shares. Jada, I'll give it back to you to kind of wrap us up, but what incredible ideas. And I love in the chat that you're all supporting each other. It's really interesting where the crossovers and the differences are. So, Jada.
Yes, thank you all so much for joining this conversation today. And we have enjoyed hearing from you. And thank you so much for your time here. And yeah, let's keep it going.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much, Jada. Just a reminder, if anyone wants to stay in touch with us, you can find us at evolvethecom.com. We do focus on interpersonal communications, and so much of what was spoken about today about just acknowledging each other, meeting people where they are, and trying to find negotiated ways of communication that work for everyone. That's what we're all about. And so if you are at an organization, lead in an organization, or want more information on how you can find coaching and training that will support a better workplace that makes it better for people and better for the organization, we would love to talk with you. My personal email is celesta@evolvethecom.com, and you're always welcome to reach out to me. Jada is also on our website. You can connect with her by her LinkedIn. So feel free to reach out. We'd love to hear from you. We also will be sending a follow-up piece. So any of you who signed up through Eventbrite, just know that we're going to send that out sometime next week with some of the templates that Jada shared, as well as some of those key highlights that she pointed out. And if any of you want anything beyond that or didn't sign up through Eventbrite, just go ahead and email us. But oh, and look, a little puppy too. Thanks, Crystal, for sharing. I think all of us, or many of us at least, have dogs in the background. So with that, thanks everyone. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Please stay in touch. And thank you, Amanda. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Yes, smart. Thanks, Amanda, for the reminder. Thanks, Ebony. Thanks, Crystal. Thanks, Heather, Annie, Hallie. Great to meet all of you. Have a great day.